Why, hello there YouTube and welcome. I'm Random Ross, and in this video we're doing the best and worst horror movies of this year so far. So we're now in July, we're out of June, we're in the next half of this year. So I thought, why not go over my best films and worst films in horror of this year so far. So let's do the worst parts first, where we just get through them. My top 5 worst horror movies of this year. It's all my personal opinion. You don't have to agree with it. If you have your own, then that's, do let me know. So, my top 5 worst horror movies of this year so far. Number 5 is Wolfman. Yeah, I know what you're saying. You're probably thinking, oh, what? No, this was good. Well, it was divisive. I mean, I admire Lee Winnell for sticking to his guns and, doing this his way. I can also admire it for the practical effects they went with on this one, with the makeup and the transformation. I just wasn't a huge fan of the werewolf mythology in this. I do like that a few callbacks, like the Saw reference where he bites his own foot off, to chase his family. But also kind of felt a bit like Cronenberg's The Fly. I like the premise, and the monster kind of looks alright, but I would have preferred if it was those less is more kind. Also in this, you don't revert back to your human state and transform in a full moon. You transform and you stay that way. But, yeah, it's definitely the least worst on this list, because there's more to come. Okay, so coming in at number 4 is Fear Street Prom Queen. So we had a good trilogy a few years back with Part 1, 1994, Part 2, 1978, and Part 3, 1666. And we got this 4th movie, which is its own standalone story, still set in that same town. But this time we're set in the 80s with a school prom. I like the 80s soundtrack. I'm a sucker for 80s movies, and I thought this had an interesting premise, but it was predictable as hell. It was a bit lousy with the plot, bitchy girls fighting and that and stuff. Like the dance-off, though, to Gloria. But, yeah, it kind of bored me a bit. Yeah. So, number 3 is Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare. Yes, another childhood classic in the public domain, another installment for the Twisted Childhood universe. It was slightly improved. I think they're getting a bit better as each movie goes on, this Twisted Childhood universe, and Peter Pan was a bit creepy, but yeah, it was just a bit there, tacky, and just somehow I've watched it though. Don't regret watching it. I was expecting it not to be a masterpiece either though. So yeah, Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare. Number 2 is Screamboat. Again, we all know the Steamboat Willie cartoon entered the public domain, and now they're making horror versions of that, like that terrible one last year we had, Mickey's Mousetrap. This one was not as bad. I did like David Howard Thornton's performance as Willie. I did like the tackiness in it, but some of the effects were just poor. And my number 1 worst horror movie of this year so far is Popeye The Slayer Man. I admire it for the practical effects. I admire it for the horror spin they come up with Popeye, because he again entered the public domain. This was one of 3 that came out this year. Shiver Me Timbers and another one, which I've not bothered to watch because I've been told they're bad. But I watched one of them at least, and this one. So, yeah, just, like I say, a bit naff. Yeah. Okay, let's do my best horror movies of this year so far. So, these are 5 of them. Before I go, I'm going to give a few honourable mentions to Megan 2.0. Kind of drifted away from the horror elements a lot, but I still enjoyed it as an action sci-fi. But I was let down that it really toned down on the horror. The Gorge, I thought, was an interesting one. Heart Eyes, which I liked, as well as a romantic comedy slasher. I like the blend of that as well. Probably revisit it next Valentine's Day. And Death of a Unicorn. Quite cheesy and that, but had a good cast, and I like unicorns. Okay, let's get to my top 5 best horror movies of this year so far. So coming in at number 4 is Clown in a Cornfield. I've never read the books. I wasn't aware that it was a book, but it dropped on Shudder and cinemas. I watched it. I love a good clown horror. It was alright, but like I say, it was a bit of a tacky one, but it was okay. I liked it for the killer clown premise, and then the whole town turning out to be some mass cult or something. But it wasn't a long movie. Number 4, Sinners. I thought this was a good one. I loved the middle act. I loved that we had vampires, we had Jack O'Connell, we had Michael B. Jordan doing a dual performance and stuff, Ryan Coogler writing and directing. But the one things that kind of did it for me were the opening act and the closing act. To me, they dragged on and were very slow. I almost got bored with it until the supernatural elements kicked off, and it was also surprisingly part musical as well. But yeah, I know people have said that this is like the best horror film of this year so far. I can see why, but my personal opinion, it just wasn't so brilliant. Okay, number 3 is The Monkey, an adaptation of Stephen King's short story. This starred Theo James in a dual role again, another actor doing 2 roles as twins. And yeah, it was marketed as something scary and sinister, but a lot of the kills kind of played out for laughs and goofs every time the monkey played his drums, and kind of were reminiscent of Final Destination. More on that in a bit. But yeah, it was just witty and funny, and I actually did enjoy it. I actually chuckled a couple times with it. So yeah, The Monkey. Also, the ending was a bit bizarre, but So number 2 is Companion. I bet you're thinking, hold on, why this? Well, I liked it. It had very dark humour. It was very humorous and funny. I mean, yeah, the second trailer did kind of ruin it a bit, but I still enjoyed it. Sophie Thatcher again, proving that there is a place for her in horror. Jack Quaid, funny but yet vile and not a nice guy, which made his demise in the movie all the more satisfying. Funny moments in there, and I was like, this is like a fucked up Black Mirror episode. And, I could see the Black Mirror vibes in it. But it was funny. And I like this one. One thing we need to get right here is we can't abuse AI, because it's real. And it could get advanced to the point where it will turn on us if we don't treat it with the respect. Okay, my number 1 pick for the best horror movie of this year so far is Final Destination Bloodlines. Yes, after a 14-year absence and 6 movies in, they change up the formula a little bit with this, with the premonition and stuff. Makes me think as well, with that premonition Iris had at the beginning of the movie, stopping the disaster from happening, saving countless lives, all of those people that survived went on to have families, and that make me think, could all of our protagonists from the previous movies be children and grandchildren of those people that should have died? Therefore, they weren't meant to exist. I like to change it because it's like, our main character in it, she was never meant to exist, and her family, because Iris should have died. We also get the origins of William Bloodworth, played by the late Tony Todd. And Tony Todd gives us one final performance in it where, after he leaves, he makes that statement, and I feel not only did he break character for that, but broke the 4th wall to give us that message. And he was also saying goodbye and thank you. No, thank you, Tony, for the chills and thrills you've given us over the years, because that statement really hit me in the heart. And yeah, I don't think there is a need for another Final Destination movie, but you know what studios are like. But this one, my favourite so far this year. So there you go. There are my best and worst horror movies of this year so far. Do you agree with my picks? Let me know down in the comments below, and if you like this video, be sure to give it a big thumbs up, share with your friends, and feel free to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and to hit that notification bell. All of my social media links are linked down below in the description, so feel free to check all that out. I've been Random Ross, and this has been my, best and worst horrors of this year so far. So, until next time, don't have nightmares.